The Turn of the Screw, written by Henry James, presented by Suzie Lamot. Three main elements needed for a healthy relationship are trust, honesty, and loyalty. In Henry James's The Turn of the Screw, those elements are not always present, which leads to the destruction of bonds formed between the characters. The main setting of the story took place in an old house in a town named Bly. Once at Bly, the storyline goes in depth about a governess who sees ghosts and tries to protect the children whom she takes care of from them. James wrote a novel in such an interesting way that the storyline could be interpreted in different ways. Furthermore, the author demonstrates how relationships can be weakened by distrust due to secrecy, innocence, and preoccupation. Secrecy is portrayed throughout the novel and thus leads to the characters not being honest and fully trusting each other. The governess as well as the readers never get to know the real reason for Miles's expulsion, except for his vague statement that he got expelled for saying things. Therefore, it creates distrust between Miles and the governess, since Miles withholds important information. By secrecy, it also creates dishonesty, and it seems almost as if the reason for his expulsion was too bad to be said out loud. Additionally, the damaging of relationships and bonds can be a consequence of secrecy. Similarly, it is scientifically proven that secrecy is not healthy, stating, keeping secrets limits responsiveness by preventing people from acting naturally and sharing freely. Beyond that, keeping secrets may actually cause harm. This piece of evidence reflects back that keeping secrets causes harm in the way of creating distrust between people and makes them more distant, since those particular people cannot trust one another. In addition, secrecy creates chaos most of the time, since it can make the characters question each other's honesty as well as it tears apart relationships. The innocence of the two children, Miles and Flora, leads to distrust. In addition, Miles's innocent appearance made the governess doubt if he would do anything bad. When the governess saw Miles for the first time, she was caught up by his appearance. She says, his indescribable little air of knowing nothing in the world but love. It would have been impossible to carry a bad name with a greater sweetness of innocence. Miles's innocence can, however, lead to distrust in him, since the governess finds it rather suspicious. She is convinced that the children hide information from her but conceal the truth with their angelic appearance. The governess is mainly focused on figuring everything out about the ghost she observes, rather than building a relationship with the children, which then leads to distrust and the destruction of their relationship. The governess is convinced that the ghosts she sees are real and therefore feels the urge to figure out everything about them, as well as protecting the children from harm. One day, the governess, Mrs. Gross, and Flora were together when the governess suddenly saw the ghost of Miss Jessel. Mrs. Gross then says, "She isn't there, little lady, and nobody's there. And you never see nothing, my sweet. How can poor Miss Jessel, when poor Miss Jessel's dead and buried?" With the governess being so obsessed with the ghosts, it creates distrust, since Mrs. Gross and Flora are not seeing the ghosts. This form of distrust can be viewed from both perspectives, as the governess is convinced that Flora and Mrs. Gross are lying about being able to see them. Similarly, Flora and Mrs. Gross are uncertain whether or not the governess is just hallucinating of some sort, since they cannot see the apparition. The governess's preoccupation leads to the relationship with Flora getting completely destroyed, as she does not want to see the governess ever again. In addition, the governess's preoccupation can be seen as a disproportionate or unusual focus on something that eventually weakens the relationship with Mrs. Gross as well as the relationship with Miles and Flora. Therefore, preoccupation creates distrust and leads to the damage of relationships. In the novel The Turn of the Screw, relationships can change from good to bad due to distrust, which is a consequence of secrecy, innocence, and preoccupation. The reoccurring motive of secrecy in the book can be a major influence on the characters' relationship, since that withholding the truth can create mistrust in the characters. Similarly, innocence can be viewed as good and sweet. However, in this novel, it is portrayed as an innocence of dishonesty and concealing the truth. In the same way, preoccupation makes the governess obsessive, which scares Flora so much to the point of her getting ill and having to leave Bly. All three elements end up creating distrust in altering or withholding information,